Aries, pause for a second. Not because something is wrong, but because something real is moving toward you. Have you felt it? That quiet certainty that something official, something unexpected, is being set into motion right now. This isn't motivation. This isn't imagination. This is the moment when a decision made in silence begins to surface in the real world. A message, a document, a name being referenced, and somehow it's yours. You didn't chase this. You didn't ask for it. Yet here it is, finding you anyway. If your chest feels tight, if your intuition just leaned forward, trust that. Comment below and say, I'm listening. Because what's unfolding next isn't random. And once you see it clearly, you'll understand why this moment couldn't have reached anyone else but you. Aries, stay with me for a moment. Not because I need your attention, but because something inside you already leaned in. There's a difference between imagination and recognition. Imagination feels loud. Recognition feels quiet. It lands in the body before it ever reaches the mind. And what you're feeling right now, that subtle tightening in your chest, that pause in your breath you didn't plan, that sense that the room feels a little more still than it did a minute ago, that's recognition. You've lived long enough to know when something is just noise, and you've lived long enough to know when silence starts carrying weight. This isn't about excitement. It's not even about hope. It's about that calm, steady knowing that something has already shifted, even if nothing visible has changed yet. Early 2026 carries that energy for you. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that rearranges things quietly, behind closed doors, while life on the surface keeps pretending everything is the same. You may have noticed it in small ways. A sudden urge to slow down. A strange awareness around paperwork, conversations, names or details that usually wouldn't matter. A thought that comes and goes, saying, pay attention, this part matters. You're not imagining that. Aries, you are not someone who waits for permission. You're used to moving first, deciding fast, taking responsibility even when no one asked you to. So when something begins to move toward you instead of the other way around, it can feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. And yet, this moment isn't asking you to charge forward. It's asking you to notice. Because there are times in life when momentum doesn't come from action. It comes from alignment. Something has already been set in motion, not emotionally, not energetically in a vague way, but practically, structurally, intentionally. Think of it like this. Somewhere, a decision has already been made. A process has already begun its slow, deliberate turn. And now, the effects of that decision are starting to ripple outward, toward you. You didn't force this. You didn't negotiate for it. You didn't even know to ask. Which raises a quiet question worth sitting with. What if some things find us only when we stop trying to control how they arrive? There's a kind of maturity that comes after years of being strong. A stage where strength softens into awareness, where leadership no longer needs to prove itself through struggle. That's where you are now. So before we go any further, let me ask you something gently, not to get an answer, just to open a door inside you. What if the feeling you've been carrying isn't anticipation, but remembrance? Take a breath. Let the noise fall away. Because the next layer of this story doesn't begin with action. It begins with noticing the moment you already felt coming. And once you see it clearly, everything that follows will make sense in a way that doesn't need explanation. Stay with me. Aries, let me stay close to you here. Not to explain anything, just to walk beside you while the picture becomes clearer. There is a reason this moment feels grounded instead of dramatic. Real shifts rarely announce themselves with noise. They arrive with a quiet weight. The kind you feel in your shoulders before you ever see proof. When I say a legal message, I am not talking about chaos, not conflict, not fear. I am talking about structure, about systems that move slowly, deliberately, and only when a decision has already been made. You have lived long enough to recognize the difference between emotional urgency and procedural truth. One rushes, the other unfolds, and what is moving toward you now carries that second energy. It may arrive wrapped in something ordinary, a formal tone, language that feels neutral. Words that do not try to impress you. That is often how the most meaningful things enter our lives, not dressed as miracles, but as details. You might almost miss it if you are not present. And that is why this moment matters. Because Aries, you are not someone who overlooks details when something feels important. You sense when a thread connects to a larger pattern, even if you cannot yet explain why. There is a difference between coincidence and alignment. Coincidence feels random. Alignment feels inevitable, even before it arrives. Early January carries that inevitability for you. Somewhere behind the scenes, a choice was already finalized, not rushed, not emotional, considered. Now that choice is beginning to surface in the physical world. You do not need to force clarity here. Clarity is coming to you. What matters is how you meet it. This is not a test of reaction. It is an invitation to steadiness. Think about how far you have come. The years you learned to act first because no one else would. The times you became the decision maker by default. That strength has shaped you, but it has also taught you to stay alert, to question what arrives without effort. That instinct protected you once, and now it is evolving, because not everything that arrives quietly is a threat. Some things arrive quietly because they were built to last. Here is a gentle question to sit with. What if trust does not mean letting your guard down, but letting your intuition lead instead of your defenses? You do not need to jump ahead. You do not need to assume an outcome. All you need right now is awareness. Awareness of what feels official. What feels deliberate. What feels too specific to be dismissed. There is no rush. There is only timing. And as this story continues to unfold, you will begin to see why this message could not have reached you earlier. Why it could not have reached anyone else. Because the next layer is not about surprise. It is about recognition. And once recognition settles in, the meaning of what is finding you becomes impossible to ignore. Stay with me. Aries, stay right here with me. Let the pace slow just enough for you to feel what is already moving closer. When something valuable finds you, it rarely announces itself as a reward. It doesn't arrive with applause. It comes quietly, like a truth that finally feels safe enough to surface. And I want you to hear this clearly. What is finding you now is not limited to numbers or transactions. Its value is layered. It carries weight because it carries meaning. Think back for a moment. Not to what you chased, but to what you were meant to hold. The responsibilities you stepped into without recognition. The roles you carried when no one else would. The moments you did the right thing simply because someone had to. Those moments don't disappear. They collect. They wait. There is a kind of value that grows quietly in the background of a life well lived. It does not demand attention. It does not need validation. It simply waits for the right moment to return. That is the energy surrounding you now. You are not being handed something because you asked loudly enough. You are being met because your presence has already shaped the outcome. Because somewhere along the line, your steadiness mattered more than speed. Your integrity mattered more than recognition. For someone like you, Aries, this can feel unfamiliar. You are used to moving first, to initiating, to earning through action. So when something comes toward you without effort, the mind may resist. It may ask questions. It may search for conditions. But let me offer you a different lens. What if this moment is not about effort at all? What if it is about placement? There are chapters in life where strength is proven through endurance, and there are chapters where strength is proven through reception, knowing when to hold, knowing when to allow. This is one of those chapters. What is finding you now carries a quiet authority, not loud, not dramatic, just undeniable once you recognize it. It may show up as an opportunity that feels strangely aligned, as a responsibility that finally makes sense, as recognition that arrives later than expected, but lands deeper because of it. And here's the part I want you to sit with gently. You did not miss your moment. Your moment was waiting for you to be ready to receive it without needing to fight. Ask yourself this, softly. What if being chosen is not about being better than anyone else, but about being steady enough to carry what comes next? You have grown into that steadiness through pressure, through patience, through lessons no one else saw. That growth did not go unnoticed. It simply did not need to be announced until now. As this story continues to unfold, the shape of what is finding you will become clearer, not all at once, but in pieces that feel intentional, grounded, real. And as each piece settles into place, you will understand why this moment did not come sooner, why it arrives now, why it arrives to you. Stay present. Let the meaning reveal itself, because what is approaching is not asking you to chase it. It is asking you to recognize it when it stands in front of you. Aries, let me tell you something. I don't say lightly. This moment didn't come to you because you were flawless. It came because you were willing to stand when others stayed seated. You've been that person more times than you can count. The one who spoke up when the room went quiet. The one who stepped forward when everyone else looked away. Not because you wanted attention, but because you understood that silence has consequences. You carry a kind of leadership that doesn't need a title. It shows up in families when things fall apart, in workplaces when responsibility gets passed around, in moments where someone has to decide and no one volunteers. That someone has often been you. And here's what most people never see. Stepping up repeatedly changes a person. It teaches you strength, yes, but it also teaches you restraint. The kind that knows when to act and when to hold steady. You didn't become this version of yourself overnight. You earned it through moments that asked more of you than they should have. Moments where walking away would have been easier, but staying felt right. So when something of value looks for a place to land, it looks for steadiness first. Not perfection, not noise, steadiness. That is why this energy recognizes you. Because what is moving towards you now is not fragile, but it is significant. It requires someone who understands weight. Someone who doesn't panic when things get real. Someone who knows how to protect what matters without needing applause. You've already proven you can do that. Think about the times you became the anchor without being asked, the protector without being thanked, the decision maker without being celebrated. Those moments didn't disappear. They shaped your capacity. There's a reason this chapter isn't arriving with chaos. It's arriving with trust. Trust that you won't misuse what you're given. Trust that you won't rush what needs patience. Trust that you'll treat value as something to steward, not consume. That kind of trust is not common, and it is not random. Let me ask you something softly. What if the reason you've carried so much is because one day you would need the strength to carry something meaningful with care? You've learned when to push, but you've also learned when to pause, when to listen, when to let clarity arrive on its own terms. That balance matters now, because what comes next is not about proving yourself again. It's about allowing your role to be acknowledged. Quietly, respectfully. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to justify it. You simply need to recognize that this moment found you because you were ready to hold it. And as we move forward, the story begins to shift in a subtle way. From why this came to you, to how you choose to meet it. That choice doesn't require force. It requires presence. Stay with me. The next layer reveals how strength transforms when it no longer needs to fight. Aries, let me speak to you gently here. Not to correct you, not to push you, just to sit beside you while something honest settles in. There's a truth most strong people carry quietly. Receiving can feel harder than fighting. Not because you don't want good things, but because you learned early how to survive without them. You became fluent in effort, in grit, in forward motion. So when something arrives without demand, the body reacts before the mind does. A subtle tightening, a pause, a question that rises without being invited. Is this real? Is there a catch? Why me? That voice isn't doubt, it's memory. It's the echo of years where you had to earn safety, where nothing came easily, where standing strong meant standing alone. That history shaped you into someone capable, reliable, unshakable when things fall apart. But it also taught you to stay guarded when ease shows up. And here is where this moment asks for something different. Not surrender. Discernment. There is a difference. Surrender says, give up control. Discernment says, recognize what is true. What's happening now is not a test of worthiness. It's an acknowledgement of capacity. You are not being measured. You are being trusted. Trusted to hold something meaningful without needing to prove anything. Trusted to receive without turning it into another battle. Trusted to let support exist without feeling smaller because of it. That is not weakness. That is maturity. You don't need to reframe your entire identity to accept this. You don't need to pretend it feels easy. It's okay if part of you still scans the horizon, still checks the fine print, still breathes a little shallower when something good appears. That instinct kept you alive once. Now, it's learning to soften. Ask yourself this quietly. What if receiving is not about deserving, but about timing? What if some things wait until you are strong enough to accept them without losing yourself? You have spent years learning how to fight. When to move, when to decide, when to take responsibility. This chapter is asking you to learn something else. How to let something arrive without turning it into a trial. That doesn't mean you stop being alert. It means you stop assuming that struggle is the price of entry. You can stay grounded and open at the same time. You can be careful without being closed. You can be strong without being rigid. That balance is rare, and you've grown into it. So if a part of you feels unsettled right now, that's not a warning. It's an old pattern loosening its grip. Give yourself permission to feel both steady and uncertain. That is what growth actually looks like. As we move forward, this story doesn't ask you to rush acceptance. It asks you to notice how your relationship with receiving begins to change. Not all at once, but gently, in real time. And as that shift takes place, you'll see why this moment wasn't meant to test you. It was meant to meet you. Stay close. The next layer shows how trust becomes action without force. Aries, let's slow this moment down together. Not to hesitate, but to stand fully inside it. When something real begins to take shape, it asks for a different kind of strength. Not the kind that charges forward, the kind that knows how to stay upright without rushing the next step. You have learned how to move fast. You've learned how to decide under pressure. You've learned how to take action when the path wasn't clear. But this moment isn't asking for speed. It's asking for steadiness. There is a quiet discipline in reading what's in front of you without projecting fear or fantasy onto it, in letting information reveal itself at its own pace, in staying present long enough to notice what is solid and what is just noise. That discipline is something you already carry, even if you don't always name it. You may feel an urge to talk about what's happening, to release the tension by sharing it, to get confirmation from others. That urge is human, but not every door opens wider when too many people look inside at once. Some moments need privacy to grow into clarity. Think of it like holding a seed. You don't pull it apart to prove it's alive. You protect it long enough for roots to form. This is one of those moments. There is wisdom in moving deliberately, in checking what's real, in trusting verified sources instead of emotional reactions. Not because you are afraid of being wrong, but because you respect what is unfolding enough not to rush it. Aries, your fire is powerful, but fire also knows when to become warmth instead of flame. You don't need to redesign your life overnight. You don't need to act as if the future has already arrived. You don't need to prove confidence by changing everything at once. Sometimes the most grounded response is simply to stay where you are and observe. Notice how your body responds when you slow down. Notice how clarity becomes sharper when urgency steps back. Notice how your intuition speaks more clearly when emotions settle. Let me ask you something gently. What if standing still right now is not hesitation, but leadership? You've spent so much of your life being the one who moves things forward. This chapter is showing you the power of holding your ground instead. That doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing what is necessary, not what is impulsive. There is a difference. As this story continues, you'll feel moments where patience feels uncomfortable. That's natural. Patience can feel like vulnerability when you're used to control. But patience here is not passive. It is protective. It keeps you clear. It keeps you aligned. It keeps you from borrowing energy from a future that hasn't fully arrived yet. And as you stay grounded, something important happens. Confidence stops being performative. It becomes embodied. You don't need to announce your strength. You don't need to explain your choices. Your calm becomes the signal that you are ready. Ready to meet what's next without being pulled off balance. Ready to let this unfold in a way that supports you long term, not just emotionally. So stay here, feet on the ground, breath steady. Because the story doesn't move forward by force. It moves forward by intention. And as intention settles in, timing begins to reveal why this moment is arriving, exactly when it is. Stay with me. Aries, let's talk about time for a moment. Not the kind you measure on a clock. The kind you feel in your bones before you understand it. There are moments in life when nothing looks different on the surface, yet everything underneath has already shifted. This is one of those moments. Quiet, precise, unavoidable. The first days of the year carry a particular weight, not because of resolutions, not because of celebration, but because they sit right at the edge between what was waiting and what is ready to move. You might not see the full picture yet, and that is important. Clarity does not always arrive all at once. Sometimes it arrives as direction before detail. What matters is this: something that was paused is no longer paused. Something that lingered in review is now stepping into motion. Not emotionally, practically. This is not superstition, it is pattern. Every long journey has a moment where the wheel finally turns. Not fast, not dramatically, just enough to signal that the waiting phase is complete. You may notice this shift in subtle ways. Conversations feel more focused. Decisions feel closer. Loose ends begin to draw toward resolution. Even your body may sense it. A deeper breath, a steadier posture, a calm that doesn't need explanation. That is timing aligning with readiness. Aries, you are not late, and you are not early. You are exactly where you need to be for what comes next. Think about how many times in your life you tried to move things forward before the ground was stable. How many times action came easily, but peace did not follow. You learned from that. You matured through it. Now, this moment meets you differently. This window is not about rushing a breakthrough. It is about allowing a process to continue without interference, step by step, layer by layer. What begins now is built to last because it is structured, intentional, systematic. That is why you may feel less urgency and more certainty, less adrenaline, more trust. Let me ask you something softly. What if timing is not about speed at all, but about alignment between effort and consequence? You are standing at that alignment now. You do not need to force visibility. You do not need to push for answers. You do not need to convince anyone of anything. What is meant to unfold has already been set in motion. Your role is not to accelerate it. Your role is to remain steady as it reveals itself. This is where your strength takes a new form, not as momentum, but as presence. Presence allows you to notice when a detail matters, when a response requires patience, when a decision is better made tomorrow than today. That kind of awareness is power, quiet power, the kind that shapes outcomes without exhausting itself. As the days move forward, you may find yourself understanding more without being told, seeing connections without searching for them, recognizing significance where others see only routine. That is timing doing its work. And when the next layer of this story steps into view, it will not feel sudden. It will feel earned by waiting. Stay grounded in this moment. Let the pace remain natural. Trust the sequence. Because what follows does not arrive by chance. It arrives because everything before, it finally made room. And when it does, you will be ready to meet it without hesitation, without doubt, and without needing to look back. Aries, let's land this gently. Not with certainty that shouts, but with a knowing that settles. You don't need to prove anything right now. Not to the world, not to the past, not even to yourself. There's a quiet kind of strength in recognizing when the door that's opening doesn't need to be forced. It opens because it's time. Because the alignment is real. Because the space was prepared long before you arrived at it. What's finding you isn't asking you to become someone else. It isn't asking you to trade your fire for silence. It's asking you to trust that the place you stand in this story is solid. You've spent a lifetime moving forward through effort, through action, through responsibility that often came without reassurance. So when something comes toward you without demand, the instinct may be to question it, to brace, to look for the task hidden inside the gift. But hear me clearly. This moment is not a challenge to overcome. It's a truth to receive. Receiving doesn't make you passive. It makes you present. It allows you to meet what arrives without turning it into another test of endurance, without measuring yourself against old standards that were built in survival mode. You are not being handed something because you finally earned rest. You are being met because you have grown into steadiness. That difference matters. There is nothing random about this, nothing careless, nothing accidental. What's unfolding carries intention. It carries weight, and it carries respect for who you've become. If you feel a calm in your chest right now, let it stay. If you feel emotion rising without a clear reason, let that move too. Both are signs of recognition. Here's a question to sit with, softly. What if receiving is not the end of your strength, but the evolution of it? Strength that no longer has to fight to exist. Strength that knows when to hold and when to allow. You don't need to rush toward what's coming. It already knows where to find you. Your role is not pursuit, it's presence. Stand where you are. Breathe where you are. Let the moment meet you fully. Because what's valuable doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly, simply waiting for the one person steady enough to recognize it. And that steadiness lives in you. So as this story settles into its next chapter, remember this: you are not chasing alignment. You are standing inside it, not because of luck, not because of chance, but because something meaningful looked for a place it could be held with care. And this time, Aries, that place is you. Stay here with that truth. Let it anchor. The rest will unfold exactly as it's meant to. Aries, before you go, pause with me one last time, because if this message reached you, it didn't do so by accident. There are moments in life when something doesn't knock loudly. It waits, patient, certain, until the right person is finally still enough to hear it. And tonight, that person might be you. You don't need to rush after what's unfolding. You don't need to prove your strength, your worth, or your readiness. What's meant for you doesn't require pursuit. It responds to presence. If anything in this message stirred something deep in your chest, trust that. That quiet recognition, that calm certainty, that sense of, this feels real. Healing doesn't always arrive as relief. Sometimes it arrives as clarity, and clarity changes everything. Aries, you've spent so much of your life being the one who leads, who decides, who carries the weight. This chapter invites you to do something just as powerful, to receive, to allow, to stand where you are, and let alignment meet you halfway. If this message spoke to you, let your voice be part of this space. Leave a comment below and write, "I'm ready to receive what aligns with me," or simply, "I trust myself." Your words don't just affirm you. They remind others that they're not walking this path alone. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Not because you need answers, but because this journey is still unfolding. The next message is already forming. Another layer, another insight, another moment of recognition waiting to find you. Stay connected, stay grounded, and most of all, trust the timing of your life. This isn't the end of the story, Aries. It's the moment you realize you're standing inside it. Until the next message, take care of yourself and stay open.